On screen, you can see the calculator we've built, and we'll run through some real world scenarios using historically accurate data for the UK to see exactly when renting is actually better than buying over certain time frames, and crucially when buying becomes the clear winner. So I'm going to set up another scenario now. This is somebody who's got a 10% deposit. So they get a better rate on their mortgage. So if you look at the best mortgage rates in the market, they will get a rate of about 4.38%. We'll put a link in the notes to the best mortgage rates out there, and I'm going to put this back to a 2-year time frame we're looking at. And even keeping a typical 3% rise in house prices, you would still be better off by buying after 2 years. And if you extend that time frame to say 10 years, you can see how quickly your wealth starts to grow. £136,000 better off by buying under this scenario. But let me put in a scenario where property prices start to fall. You're unlucky like me and you buy just as the market starts to turn. Every time I buy a house, the market does seem to fall. It just seems to be slight bad luck. Now, assuming we're going to look at 2 years again, the first 2 years, because that's when people's mortgages come up and they often think about a 2-year time frame. Under that scenario of properties have fallen 1% for 2 years in a row, you will be marginally worse off by about £4,500 if you buy a house. You'd be better off just staying renting based on the assumptions that we've made. But then look how quickly the situation resolves itself. After 4 years, you've already dropped down. You're only £3,000 worse off. By the time you get to 10 years, this is still assuming that house prices are falling 1% a year, you very quickly get into positive territory by buying a property being better off to the tune of nearly £18,000. And that's because you are clearing more of your mortgage, you've got a bigger chunk of equity, and it increases as you pay it down. You get out of negative equity even quicker. So then if we put this back to a long-term average, we're talking about the annual house price rise to 3%, then you can see it's very significant that when you buy a house and you've got a significant deposit, that your wealth does grow more quickly if you buy. But the takeaway from this point is that that's why I would always buy a property with a repayment mortgage, which is really the only option you pretty much have these days, although there are now more interest-only mortgages becoming available. Back when I bought my first property at the financial crisis, you could get interest-only mortgages, but I bought with a repayment, despite seemingly everyone else doing interest-only, because I was mindful of the fact that if you have a repayment mortgage and you have a decent enough deposit, they protect you from negative equity and they keep your options open, so if you need to move you are able to in the future. So people looking at this might think, well, buying properties a great investment, that's why it does better than maybe saving. But the reason why having money in property can suddenly accelerate your wealth is not because of the property itself necessarily. It's really down to the fact that you are using something called leverage. So the UK economy is set up and you're able to borrow money at scale and invest in property. You can't invest in other things, but you can borrow money at scale, multiples of 6 times your salary, and buy a property. So that's why when property prices go up, even just a small amount, when I've been playing with these calculators, suddenly your wealth accelerates, because it's the percentage on the total property value that is working on. And you, in fact, even if you only got a small amount of equity, you are using leverage to amplify your returns. But it's also why when prices fall, that you can see your wealth decline significantly, and renting ends up being the better. So if you learn one thing from this video, when people talk about property as a great investment, it's leverage that's doing most of the lifting, that's making you more wealthy.